All your autumn classics in this week's weather. We've got a touch of frost, some fog patches, a little bit of lovely sunshine, and then things turn wetter and potentially very windy to end the week. Let's look at the winds high up in the atmosphere because they're kind of telling the story. As we start the week, the jet stream is pretty feeble across the UK and fairly weak even out in the Atlantic, shifted to the north of the UK. But fast forward to Saturday and look at the dramatic change. The jet stream has much more about it, much more oomph, and it's also shifted right in across the UK. So that's what's going to bring about the change. What does that change look like? Well, in terms of our pressure pattern, the fairly feeble jet is just pushing low pressure systems up towards Iceland. Still, these weather fronts are going to interact with northern Britain, quite windy here and fairly wet, especially around the middle of the week. But as the jet sinks south, picking up these lows, spinning them in and giving them more of a direct hit across the UK. So that's what we're going to see, a big shift in the weather as we go through this week. Let's look day by day because there's some big contrasts during each day. We start the week with high pressure still sitting across the south, still here for Tuesday, albeit fairly weak. And these weather fronts are also fairly weak because the jet stream doesn't have much about it, but still providing quite a bit of cloud and some patchy rain across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, maybe the odd shower for northern parts of England and northern and west Wales. But most of England and Wales looking dry on Tuesday. Could be some fog around early doors. That should clear away. The winds are pretty light here, but the winds will be strengthening across more northern parts as we see those weather fronts moving in. Temperature-wise, well, yes, a chilly start, but by the afternoon, bit of sunshine in the southeast. We could pop up to 20 Celsius. Mostly we're in the high teens. Now, as we go through Tuesday night and into Wednesday, we'll see this next batch of rain moving in. And once it's set in from these weather fronts, it's kind of going to last through Wednesday and through most of Thursday. The isobars squidging together as well. So as I said, those winds picking up during Tuesday and staying quite lively through Wednesday also. That rain, though, that's the biggest cause for concern initially. Quite a wet start for Northern Ireland. Should get drier here, but doesn't get drier in western Scotland. The rain continues to fall here throughout the day. Parts of the northeast of Scotland well sheltered, so we could see temperatures jumping up here. And further south, again, most places dry and bright. Could again be some fog around in the morning, and we'll see some hazy sunshine. I think quite a bit of cloud around, so we're not going to see those clear blue skies, but still enough brightness to lift the temperatures again up to maybe 20 degrees Celsius. That rain still falling on Wednesday nights. These weather fronts bumping up against the high pressure, but kind of grinding to a halt and just waving and wriggling around across western Scotland. So that is, as I say, the greatest cause for concern over the next few days. That rain continuing to build up. Met Office yellow warning in place. Looks like a fairly wet day in Northern Ireland on Thursday as well. Again, maybe the odd shower getting into Anglesey and across into Cumbria, but a good chunk of England and Wales will once more be dry and bright. And look at the temperatures with some hazy sunshine. We could get up into the low 20s. 21 Celsius is 70 Fahrenheit. Elsewhere, again, we're in the high teens. Notice, though, the winds are picking up everywhere by this stage, so it will be a breezier day across eastern parts and not just windy, but that rain, as I say, continuing to build up. So if you look at some of the totals over the next couple of days, that's why we're concerned about western Scotland, whilst large parts of central and eastern England will be dry this week. In the northwest of Scotland, the rainfall totals really building up. We could easily see 50 to 75 millimetres of rain quite widely, and we'll see much more than that over the hills, maybe into the hundreds of millimetres of rainfall, perhaps as much as 250 in some locations. And that kind of rainfall falling on the mountains, all coming then down, could cause some flooding issues. And if you are travelling across western Scotland later this week, do keep up to date with the forecast and maybe allow a little extra time for that journey. As one area of low pressure then finally clears away, we could see a bit of a gap as this weather front sinks southwards. That will bring some rain to parts of England and Wales on Friday. Should be clearing away as we go through the morning, but some uncertainty about the timing of that. Drier day for Scotland, but even then, still some showers into the west. And look at this. The next area of rain then comes sweeping in, accompanied by some strengthening winds. Temperatures, again, mostly in the high teens, but not feeling as warm because it's going to be turning quite wet, it looks like, across the south on Friday. Has to be said, there's quite a bit of uncertainty about the details at this stage, and the reason for that will soon become clear. This swirl is an area of low pressure, but let's track it back to its origins, and we have to head right the way across the Atlantic and down towards the tropics. Very warm air tucked in here. Not one but two tropical cyclones at the moment. Hurricane Humberto, a Category 5 storm at the weekend. It has weakened a little bit, and this weather system is also intensifying, potentially becoming a hurricane as it moves northwards over the next day or so. They're going to interact with each other. So now that is always a bit of a flag for meteorologists. So things are never plain sailing when you've got two tropical systems potentially interacting with each other. Then they move north, crucially, this one in particular becomes ex-Humberto, no longer a hurricane through the middle of the week. As it tracks across cooler waters, it will undergo extratropical transition, but still potentially developing into an area of low pressure. How it does that and whether a new low spawns just ahead of it, well, that is an area that we need to keep a close eye on over the course of the middle and latter part of the week, because it's this low that then gets picked up by the jet stream and tracks somewhere across the UK. It may have some tropical air mixed in with it, but it won't be the same beast that it is at the moment. But with all that going on, we do need to keep a close eye on it as it moves up towards the UK, bringing with it potentially some wet and windy conditions. Now, I say potentially because it's not certain that it's going to be in this track. Far from it. As I say, it's got to interact with the jet stream. There's that interaction between those two tropical cyclones ahead of it as well. And this is 5 days away. So it is one of those ones where you need to keep up to date with the forecast. Now, this is the Met Office model projection of where it could be out in the North Sea by midday on Saturday. But we look at the European forecast centre, the ECMWF data, that's taking the low much further north and away from the main body of the UK. Still likely to provide some wet and windy conditions, but quite a bit of a difference there when we run the model once. But of course, we don't just run the model once. We often run these computer models many times. And that's what I can show you here, the European model ensemble, when you run the model many times. And each of these white lines is a different track of that low. Now, you can see more of the tracks taking it up in that trajectory up towards between the UK and Iceland, and not as many of them are going in across the UK like the Met Office main model is. So a bit of uncertainty about its exact track. As I said, nothing unusual about that at this kind of lead time. Let me show you a couple of the different examples here, two of the different ensemble runs. This one would take that low in right across the UK, and that means what that means for our weather. It would be very wet and very windy right across the UK. But if this one comes off, if that's the track of the low pressure system, then it would still provide some wet and windy weather, particularly across northwestern parts of the UK. But with the isobars opening up, probably just a few showers and some sunshine across some more southern and eastern parts. So quite a contrast, and that subtle shift and all those complex interactions with the jet stream will make a big difference to our weather this weekend. As I said at the start, the main message at this stage is do keep up to date with the forecast. But just going back to that European model run, you can see that more of the ensembles, more likely that it is in that zone somewhere between the UK and Iceland, but we can't completely rule out that more of a direct hit from that low pressure system. So do keep up to date with the forecast over the next few days. We will, of course, be monitoring the situation very, very carefully as those two tropical cyclones interact, and then the potential interaction with the jet stream also. Best way for you to keep up to date is to follow us on social media, and if you haven't done already, subscribe to our YouTube channel.